everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how to make Baby Yoda, or actually Grogu, from the Mandalorian out of gum paste. And if you see me using any tools or supplies that you could use, check the link in the description below. It should be able to help you out. Now to begin our baby, I'm just going to call him Baby Yoda because it's just easier, even though I know his name now is Grogu. I'm just going to stick with Yoda because I think it's a little easier. Okay, now I'm going to begin with his coat. So I started with some very beige kind of colored gum paste, and this is gum paste, not fondant. And I shaped it kind of into a loose sloppy cone. I stuck a lollipop stick down the center and pressed some marks in the sides just to kind of make some ridges kind of in his coat because it's very wrinkly. It doesn't fit him quite appropriately. These are going to be sleeves, his sleeves. They are big and chunky, as you can see, because his little coat doesn't seem to fit him properly. I don't know. I felt like it was also too tapered at the top because if you look at him, he's pretty much, straight up and down on the sides. It doesn't taper the way I had it. So I cut off a bunch of it in order to make it look that way. So it's more straight up and down on the sides. So don't make the cone size, the cone shape, even though I showed it to you. I have a little strip that you see me doing right up the center. I put some marks in it to make it look like stitching. And now I'm going to do, I don't know, underneath his arms on either side of his coat and the underside of his sleeves, he's got kind of like little furry patches on the material. So that's what I'm making. I'm cutting out some circles, and I'm using my tool there that makes the stitching pattern, and I'm just kind of just cross-hatching all over it, just back and forth, zigzags, just roughing it all up to make it look more textured. I'm putting a circle on either side, and then I'm coming back to his sleeves again. I just rolled it out so it was kind of thick. I'm trying to flatten off the edge a little bit, so I'm just pinching it between my fingers to make sure they're the same size. That's always good. And then I'm cutting the tops at a pretty sharp angle, and the sleeves are not long. Like, he's not long. He's all torso and ears, basically. So I am doing some more of the little cross-hatching stuff as I did before. I used a smaller circle this time, and I kind of cut it in half. I want it to be on the underside of his sleeves, because if you look at his coat closely, you can kind of see where the pattern goes up on the sides and then up under the sleeves as well. So that's what I'm trying to emulate here with that. And when you put it together, they match up, so that it's like, oh yeah, look, it worked out okay. Not too shabby. Now I didn't do much else with the coat. As you can see, it's just kind of sitting there. I'm moving on to his head. I start out with a ball of light green gum paste, and I'm pinching off the two ends, kind of pulling them out, trying to be real careful because my fingernails will definitely leave marks in it if I'm not careful. And I'm just pulling very gently, stretching and working the gum paste out to the side to make his ears. I'm using that tool there to kind of hollow into the side of his head a little bit. And I'm going along the top, but I'm leaving it as a ridge at the top. So it's got like a big ridge at the top, smaller ridge at the bottom, and then pressing into the head. You see, so I'm kind of like using my thumb to press against when I'm doing the top of the ear. I'm just very carefully pulling because you can tear gum paste. Gum paste is not all that stretchy, so work it. I'm kind of separating out the top of the ear from the head. Again, just keep pulling it out and working it out gently, nice and patiently. You don't want it to get too thin. I'm folding in the little section in the front there. See, I'm kind of pushing from the bottom and then press it to kind of fold over the ear a little bit. It's hard to explain, but you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. So I'm just trying to separate the ears. So now I've got more of a round head with the two giant ears attached. And you got to make sure you have giant ears because he has giant ears. I perhaps made his head and his ears too big compared to the coat that I made. I'd recommend if you do this to make his head smaller in proportion, because I feel like looking back at the finished product, I think it might have been too big. I'm still happy with it, but it could always be better, right? So now I'm using my ball tool to hollow out two big old gouges in his head because he has enormous dark eyes. I'm doing a little cheat here and just going with black gum paste, just straight up black. So I'm filling in the entire sockets with black. You don't have to. You could use dark brown and make an iris and then black if you want. I'm using my tool once again to just kind of press down above each eye to kind of give him more of a eyebrow ridge. If you work it quickly enough, like my gum paste was kind of drying out because it's been pretty chilly where I am, so I've had the heat on, so it dries out the air really quick. It makes it a little harder to work sometimes. But if you are able to, you can press down and create kind of like little eyelids as well. Just press down over top of your eyes. I wasn't able to do that. So he's very wide-eyed and at attention, but he's got those ridges above his eyebrows. And you can see I just keep adding more ridges. I'm doing on the sides, around his eye. I'm going to go straight down the center. There you can really see the ridges. Couple little pressures on either side. I'm going on either side of where his nose will be. And I'm going underneath his eyes to the side again. So his eyes are kind of buggy, but that's okay. I'm just using a little ball of gum paste for his nose. And then I'm going to use my veining tool there to poke a couple little nostrils. And there you go. That's it. So he's got his eyes, he's got his head ridges, and he's got his nose and face cheek ridges. He's very wrinkly for being such a little guy. I'm making him a little bit more on the happy side, so I just use my veining tool again just to press a line across. Yeah, like I said, it's not the best. I've never made him before. I was happy with him, but I feel like once you know, the first one's always the roughest. So yeah, make his head a little smaller, make his ears more narrow and long rather than as wide as mine are, and it'll be perfect. I'm using some pink shimmer, just some pink shimmer dust to put a little pink in his ears. Because I thought, why not, right? Maybe it'll look cute. I'm using some green shimmer to go over some of the wrinkles in his head, and I'm not adding any color, or excuse me, any liquid to it. I'm just dusting it on, if you will. There's no painting it on here. So I'm going over all his ridges. I'm going kind of on the outline of his ears a little bit, and it just gives him a little bit more shadowing, a little bit more depth and color. Some of it, like that, is too dark, and if you go too dark, just rub it. And then it comes off, and if it really is stubborn, get a damp paper towel and rub that, and that'll take it right off. So you really can't go wrong here. It's pretty safe to use. I'm adding a few more wrinkles to his coat in his sleeves, as you saw. And now this big piece I rolled out is going to become his collar. So I'm cutting the one end at an angle, as you saw, pretty sharp, and the other one's cut at a smaller angle to go kind of downward. And I want it to be big and thick and poofy because that's kind of how his coat is. And now I'm using that same tool before to make the stitching pattern, and I'm cross-hatching all over the place, and I'm zigzagging and up and downing. And I edited it out a lot because it was literally minutes of me doing this and then getting frustrated because everywhere I held it, I would end up smoothing it out by squeezing it a little too tight. So anyway, once you get it roughed up enough, and if you don't have that tool, it's no big deal. You could use one of the tips, like a piping tip, if you have a rough piping tip, like one of the star tips maybe, and just kind of, you know, poke it all up, rough it up that way. Lots of ways you can cheat on this if you need to. Anyway, once you're happy with it, put it in place, and you can see how it'll sit, like, ah, isn't that cute? Okay, now we're going to keep going with his coat. I'm going to add the bottom ruff of his coat now. I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did for the collar. So I rolled it out. This is going to be thinner because it's not quite as big. It's going to be thinner. I set my little coat on top just to kind of measure it out, trim off the extra, stick the pieces together at the end with a little bit of water, which I didn't show you, but I think you can handle that. Rough it all up however you need to do it. Add some more water and then set the coat right on top, and now you have the little ruffly fur trim at the bottom of his jacket. Okay, yeah, that's it. And I'm also working on a paper towel now, so it'll be easy to move around. Now I'm going to add the ruffled trim to the sleeves. Same thing as before, I just rolled it smaller and smaller as we're going, and rough it up. If you end up messing it up by pressing too hard, which I kind of did, just add a little bit more to it right on there. And now this is pretty much the final touch here. I'm taking brown food coloring and a little bit of water and a big old paintbrush, which I love. I love this paintbrush. It's fun to use. And I am just painting the jacket. And I'm allowing the dark food coloring to get into all the little cracks and all the little ruffles I made and all the little cross hatchings I made. And I'm going to paint all over it. I'm focusing mainly on the collar, the ruffles, and the trim, you know, and all the wrinkles I put into it. But I'm going to end up going back over all of it with just water in my paintbrush. I don't clean it out necessarily, but it's going to kind of lighten it up and balance it out and smooth it out. Don't forget to do the back. Don't forget to do underneath the collar and underneath the sleeves, all those little spots that I realized I missed and had to go back for. Like you can see right there, I'm like, oh, I gotta go under that sleeve. Yes, so do all over it. When you're done with it, You know, like I said, I went over it with just some water just to kind of even it out a bit. And then I plop the head on, and yeah, Baby Yoda looking good. All right, we're not done yet. Okay, and don't worry about how shiny the jacket is right now either, because of the nature of the game here. It's going to dry, and when it does, it won't be so glossy. It'll retain all the color and everything. It'll be much more matted. I made 3 little, I don't know, what do you want to call them? Little cones, little spikes of gum paste there. And those are going to be his little fingers, because I think it's so cute when they stick out from his sleeve, because it's just a little baby hand sticking out his big old sleeve, and it's so cute. So I'm making the 3 little pieces. I have his little fingers peeking out, and I happen to have a big silver bead, a candy bead, that I'm putting in his one hand, because if you've watched The Mandalorian, you know about the silver ball. And so I decided I was going to try to incorporate that as best I could. I could have made it bigger, honestly, because it kind of gets lost in his sleeve. You don't really see it too well there. But it's there, and anyone who watches the show will be like, oh, there it is, that's so cool. Anyway, now I'm painting a little bit of black food coloring right onto his eyes to make them shiny. No water or anything mixed in, just straight up food coloring, so that way it'll maintain its shine. Put them together. There he is. There you go, Baby Grogu, or Baby Yoda, whatever you want to call it, from The Mandalorian. So, I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe, because that does help me out. Check out my other videos. I got a whole bunch out there. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.